They say when you finally find peace, somebody always comes trying to steal it from you. And I learned that the hard way, the day my own son-in-law tried to take my brand new cabin and claim it as theirs. But see, I let him. At least, that's what he thought. My name's May Ellen Turner, 58 years old, retired school counselor from Atlanta, Georgia. After 32 years of listening to other folks' children break their mama's hearts, I promised myself one thing. When I retired, I was gonna find me a little house far away from all that noise. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere my phone don't ring and the only thing knocking is the wind. If you're listening to this, please don't go anywhere. Like, subscribe, share, and comment, because what I'm about to tell you, it's the kind of story that'll make you question who you let inside your home. When I first saw the cabin on Whisper Ridge, up in the North Carolina mountains, I just stood there on that gravel driveway and cried. Not because it was fancy, no. It was small, simple. But it breathed. Pine trees stood tall around it like old church deacons guarding the door. The porch wrapped all the way around, creaking under my feet like it was greeting me. And that little stream down the hill, it whispered just loud enough to drown out the noise I'd been running from my whole life. I signed the papers that same week. Packed my things, kissed my daughter Tasha on the cheek, and told her I was finally going to rest. "Ma," she said, "you can't just run off to the mountains like that. What if something happens to you up there?" I told her, "Baby, something been happening to me for years. Stress, noise, bills, people needing things I ain't got. I'm just changing the scenery." But it wasn't Tasha that worried me. It was her husband, Marcus. From the first day I met him, something about that man rubbed me wrong. He smiled too much, talked too fast, and looked at people like they were pieces on his chessboard. When Tasha told me she was marrying him, I bit my tongue 'cause I wanted her happy. But I never did trust that boy. The first time he came to see the cabin, he stood on that porch with his hands on his hips, looking around like a man inspecting property. He said, "Nice place, Miss May. Real cozy. Kinda small though, ain't it? But I guess it's enough for one person." I smiled and said, "That's exactly what I was going for." But inside, something about his tone made my stomach tighten. 3 months after I moved in, I was finally settling. My mornings started with coffee and that mountain air that smells like wet leaves and peace. Then one afternoon, my phone rang. It was Tasha, her voice small, shaky. "Ma, Marcus says his parents need a place to stay for a while. Their house in Charlotte got some kind of plumbing issue. He thought maybe they could come stay with you for a few weeks." I sat up straight in my rocking chair. "Stay with me? Tasha, I just got here. I'm still unpacking boxes." "I know, Ma, but he says it's temporary," she whispered, like she didn't even believe it herself. Then I heard his voice in the background, that slick, fake sweet tone. "Let me talk to her." He got on the phone. "Miss May, I know it's sudden, but my parents don't got nobody else close by. And this house, it's plenty big. You won't even notice them." Then he laughed. "And if it's too much for you, maybe you can move back to the city for a while. You know, till things settle." That last line hit like a slap. Move back to the city? After all I'd been through to finally get this peace. But I didn't let him hear the fire in my chest. I just said, real calm, "All right, Marcus. You go ahead and send 'em up. I'll have a room ready." He paused, like he wasn't expecting that. "Really? Well, that's mighty generous of you, Miss May." I said softly. "You tell 'em I'll be waiting." After I hung up, I just sat there for a long while, listening to the wind push against the trees. You ever get that feeling like the Lord himself just whispered in your ear, "Don't you let them win"? That's what I felt right then. See, Marcus didn't know that I wasn't some sweet, helpless retiree. He didn't know that before I left Atlanta, I'd spent a year learning about property law, home rights, and what happens when people try to move into something that ain't theirs. And most of all, he didn't know that I'd been watching the way he handled my daughter, the way his voice got sharp when she disagreed with him. No, I wasn't about to argue. I was about to plan. The next morning, I drove down to the little town of Boone, North Carolina, and stopped by the local sheriff's office. Sheriff Daniels was a kind man, old friend of my cousin's from back in the day. I told him I was expecting company, and that I wanted to make sure nobody could say they owned anything up at my place. He chuckled and said, "Miss Turner, you don't look like a woman folks should be messing with anyway." I smiled. They can find that out soon enough. On my way back up the mountain, I stopped by the hardware store. Bought a few things, a motion camera, a sign that said "Welcome to Whisper Ridge," and something small that fit neatly in the palm of my hand, a digital voice recorder. If Marcus or his people tried to test me, I was gonna make sure their words stayed right where they belonged, on tape. When I got home, I brewed me a cup of chamomile tea and looked out that wide porch window. The sun was setting, gold light spilling over the trees. You'd never think such a peaceful place could be the stage for betrayal. But peace don't last long when greed shows up uninvited. That night, Tasha called again. Her voice was tired. "Ma, they'll be there by Friday." I said softly, "All right, baby. I'll be ready." She hesitated. "Ma, please don't start no fight with Marcus, okay?" I laughed a little. "Baby, I don't fight. I finish." And that's exactly what I planned to do. Because when they arrived at my cabin, Marcus, his mama, and his daddy, they were expecting a sweet welcome and open arms. But what they got instead was the kind of welcome that breaks a person. Friday came slow, heavy with that grey kind of sky that hangs over the mountains like a secret. I'd been up since dawn, sweeping the porch and setting out 2 pitchers of sweet tea, just like a good southern hostess. But every move I made was part of a bigger plan. The cabin smelled like cedar polish and lemon oil. I had gospel humming on the radio low, letting the sound fill the air so nobody could hear the click of the little recorder I'd hidden under the kitchen counter. I placed another one in the guest room too, tucked inside a basket of towels. By 11 o'clock, the gravel on my driveway crunched under tires. They'd arrived. Marcus stepped out first, slick as ever, polo shirt, gold chain, the kind of man who wanted folks to think he'd made it. Tasha got out next, eyes down, shoulders pulled in like she was bracing for weather. Then came the parents, Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell. They were older, mid-60s maybe, dressed too fine for mountain living. Mr. Caldwell had that proud, stiff-backed walk of a man who thought humility was a weakness. Mrs. Caldwell smiled like someone auditioning for sainthood, but her eyes, sharp as thumbtacks, took in every inch of my porch like she was already moving in. I stepped out, drying my hands on my apron. "Well, look who the wind done blew up the hill," I said, smiling wide. Marcus grinned. "Told you we'd make it, Miss May. Thought we'd come early, get everyone settled." "Early's fine," I said. "Gives me time to show y'all where everything is." Tasha hugged me, whispering, "You sure you okay with this, Ma?" I whispered back, "Baby, this my house. I'm always okay." Mrs. Caldwell came forward, hands clasped. "Oh, May Ellen. This cabin is just darling. We can help you fix it up a bit, make it cozier." I smiled. "Cozy enough for me already. But you're welcome to make yourselves comfortable." Mr. Caldwell nodded, eyes running along the porch railing. "You got good bones on this place. Wouldn't take much to add on a second floor." Marcus chuckled. "That's what I told her, Pop. Maybe someday, we could." "Maybe someday," I cut in, still smiling. "But right now, we just can enjoy what's here." I opened the door and waved them inside. The warmth from the fireplace wrapped around us, but it couldn't melt the chill creeping between us. Mrs. Caldwell stopped by the mantel, touching my framed photo of Tasha when she was little. "You know," she said softly, "Marcus always said Tasha gets her stubborn streak from you." I laughed. "That's so? Well, I guess he should have known better than to test it then." The air went tight for just a second before Marcus changed the subject. "Ma, you got any extra bedding?" They brought a couple bags. I pointed down the hall. "Everything they need's in that first room on the left." As they unpacked, I poured tea and sat with Tasha at the kitchen table. She kept twisting her wedding ring, eyes wet. "He didn't even ask me before he called you, Ma." I told him it wasn't right. "I know, baby," I said softly. "Sometimes people show you who they are when they think they're in charge." She looked up. "You're not mad?" "Oh, I'm mad. But mad don't mean messy. Right about then, Marcus came back in with that salesman grin. You ladies talking about me? I sipped my tea. Only good things, I promise. He laughed. Good. I want this to be easy, Miss May. You got plenty of room here. Thought maybe once my parents are settled, we could start using this as a family retreat. Get everyone out of the city more often. I stared at him, calm. A family retreat, huh? That's a nice way to put it. But Marcus, this ain't a community center. This my home. He smirked. Of course, of course. Just thinking long term, you know? Tasha and we were even talking about maybe helping you manage the place if you ever wanted to rent it out. That was his first slip, saying manage. Like he already saw himself with keys in his hand. I set my cup down slow. That's mighty thoughtful. But I manage myself just fine. Tasha looked between us, silent, eyes pleading for peace. Mrs. Caldwell stepped in, her smile sugary. Marcus only meant you shouldn't be up here all alone, dear. Things happen to older folks. I laughed, sweet and low. That's true. But things happen to everybody, Mrs. Caldwell. Sometimes even when they think they're safe. She blinked. I saw a flicker of something uneasy in her eyes. Dinner that evening was polite, too polite. I made fried chicken, collard greens, and cornbread, but the only thing that got eaten good was tension. Mr. Caldwell talked about investments, Marcus bragged about work, and Tasha sat quiet while her mother-in-law offered decorating advice I never asked for. After dishes, I walked out onto the porch alone. The air was cold, clean, still. And under the faint hum of crickets, I heard the cabin creak, the kind of sound wood makes when it remembers what it's holding. Inside, I saw Marcus standing by the window, watching me. When our eyes met, he smiled, lifted his glass, and mouthed the word cheers. I smiled back. But inside, I was already 6 steps ahead. Before bed, I checked the cameras. One faced the porch, another the driveway. The little red lights blinked steady, watching, listening. Around midnight, I heard whispers down the hall. I slipped out my room, bare feet quiet on the wood floor. The voices came from the guest room, Marcus and his daddy. Through the door, I caught just enough. She don't even lock the deed up, Pop, Marcus said. All that land, just sitting here. Once we help her out, she'll see it makes sense for us to take over. Tash'll be grateful. Mr. Caldwell's voice rumbled low. Just go easy, boy. She ain't stupid. I know, Marcus said. That's why I gotta make her think it's her idea. I backed away slow, heart steady, not shocked, just sure. He wasn't just greedy. He was plotting. And that recorder under the counter, it caught every word. I went back to bed and pulled the quilt to my chin, a smile sneaking across my face. They thought they were playing chess. But they didn't know the board was already mine. By morning, I had pancakes on the griddle and my welcome to Whisper Ridge sign leaning against the porch rail, the one they'd see first thing when they stepped outside. But it wasn't just a sign. Behind it was something hidden, wired, and waiting, part of the welcome I'd promised them. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the trees like liquid gold, but peace felt like a rumor. The Caldwells were already awake, voices carrying from the kitchen, Mrs. Caldwell complaining about the coffee being too strong, Mr. Caldwell asking where the sugar was, like they'd lived there for years. I stood in the doorway, watching them move around my kitchen like ants in a sugar bowl. They didn't even see me at first. Mrs. Caldwell was rummaging through my cabinet, frowning at my dishes. These are all mismatched, she said. We should bring up some nicer ones next time. Mr. Caldwell nodded. And maybe a bigger table. This one's a bit small for family gatherings. I smiled. Good morning to you all too. They froze. Mrs. Caldwell turned, flustered. Oh, May Ellen, we were just making yourselves at home, I said gently. That's fine. I told y'all to be comfortable. Marcus walked in just then, hair still damp from a shower, grinning like he'd been born in that smile. Morning, Miss May. Coffee smells good. I handed him a cup. Hope it tastes as good as it smells. It's the strong kind. Wakes you up, helps you think straight. He sipped, watching me over the rim of the cup. I can handle strong. I sat at the table, slow and calm. So, Marcus, you and your folks settling in okay? Yeah, he said, leaning back. Pop says this place could use a few updates, though. I was thinking, if you ever decide to renovate, I know some guys who can help. Maybe even put in a new deck. You'd be surprised how much value a few upgrades could add. I said. Value's nice. But peace is priceless. He chuckled. Sure. But you gotta think about the future, Miss May. I mean, what happens to the property after, later on? I raised an eyebrow. Later on? He grinned. Just saying, you might want to add someone to the deed. For security. I let out a long, slow breath. Marcus, baby, I appreciate your concern. But I don't need extra names on my piece of paper. I got Jesus and a lawyer, and between the two of them, I'm covered. The look he gave me was polite, but his eyes, they darkened just a little. He smiled again, but it didn't reach those eyes. Mrs. Caldwell cleared her throat. May Ellen, dear, I do hope you don't think we're intruding. We just want to help however we can. Oh, I know, I said, voice sweet. That's why I put together something special for y'all. A little welcome gift. Marcus perked up. Oh, what kind of gift? I nodded toward the front porch. You'll see. They followed me outside. The air was crisp, carrying the smell of wet pine and distant rain. Right there by the steps stood the big wooden sign I'd painted, Welcome to Whisper Ridge. It looked warm, cheerful, friendly. But what they didn't know was that inside that sign sat a small camera and a wireless speaker, linked to my phone. Isn't that sweet? Mrs. Caldwell said, running a hand over the lettering. It's thoughtful. Marcus smiled. Very nice, Miss May. Real welcoming. I said. It's there to remind folks that this house got a soul. Every time someone new comes, it watches. Mrs. Caldwell blinked. It watches? I grinned. You know how cabins are. They remember who belongs and who don't. Their smiles faltered for half a second, just enough. After breakfast, Tasha helped me clean the kitchen. She kept glancing at me like she wanted to say something. Finally, she whispered, Ma, please don't provoke him. Baby, I said, keeping my voice low, a man that feels provoked by peace was already planning a fight. She looked down. He's been different lately. Controlling. I know, sugar, I said softly. That's why I'm letting him hang himself with his own rope. But you stay out the way. You hear me? Tears shimmered in her eyes. I just want to go home. You will, I said. But not before I finish this. By afternoon, clouds rolled in. The sky turned grey-blue, and the wind picked up like it was carrying news. I was on the porch shelling peas when Marcus came out, hands in his pockets. Miss May, he said, I didn't mean to overstep this morning. You know I care about Tasha, and you. Just trying to make sure the family's secure. I looked up at him. You mean you're secure? He laughed. Come on now, you make it sound like I'm the villain. I smiled slow. Villains don't always wear capes, baby. Sometimes they wear cologne. He froze for just a second, then grinned again, masking it. You're sharp, Miss May. I like that. Sharp enough to cut through lies, I said, eyes still on my peas. He walked off without another word. And as he stepped down the porch, the hidden camera caught every flicker of that fake smile. That night, after everyone turned in, I sat at the kitchen table with my cup of tea and played back the recordings. The one from the night before, Marcus and his father whispering, came through clear. Make her think it's her idea. Then a new one, from that morning, picked up a different kind of conversation, Mrs. Caldwell's voice, hushed and cold. She's got money saved, Marcus. She mentioned her pension. Maybe tell her we'll help her invest. Marcus replied, don't worry. I'll work her over slow. I paused the recording and smiled. There it was, the truth. Not even 2 days in my home, and they'd already planned to drain me dry. What they didn't know was that my welcome wasn't just a sign and a smile. I'd been setting things up since before they arrived. The motion sensors, the hidden mics, the cameras, all synced to my phone, all time-stamped. And there was one more thing. In the storage room, behind the old cedar chest, I had a safe, small but strong, holding copies of every deed, document, and recording I'd ever made. All of it legal. All of it ready. Still, I kept my calm. Patience is a weapon when you know how to use it. By the third night, the tension in that cabin could have split the walls. Mr. Caldwell started asking about helping with bills. Marcus kept making comments about sharing space. Mrs. Caldwell even started rearranging my dishes, said she was just organizing. But I didn't stop her. I just watched. Listened. Waited. Then came the moment that told me everything I needed to know. After dinner, I caught Marcus standing by the window, phone pressed to his ear. He thought I couldn't hear him over the wind, but the cabin carries sound like a church carries sin. "Yeah," he said. "It's a done deal. We'll start moving our stuff up next week. She'll give in, trust me." He hung up and turned, only to find me standing in the doorway. "Oh, Miss May," he said, fake surprised. "Didn't see you there." "I noticed," I said quietly. "Who you talking to?" He smiled. "Work stuff. Just clients." He took a step closer. "You sure you're okay, Miss May? You seem a little tense." I met his eyes. "I'm just thinking about all the people who mistake kindness for weakness." He tilted his head. "And what happens to them?" I smiled. "They find out the hard way." For a second, something flickered in his expression, a mix of curiosity and fear. Then he laughed it off, patting the doorframe as he passed me. But I could tell. He knew I knew. And that was exactly how I wanted it. Because by the next morning, when the storm hit and the roads closed, they'd be trapped up here with me. And my welcome? It was only just beginning. The rain started slow, just a whisper against the roof, but by noon, it was roaring like the heavens had split open. Thunder rolled down the mountains, heavy and mean, shaking the windows. Power flickered twice before giving up altogether, leaving us in a grey hush lit only by the fire. The Caldwells were restless. Mrs. Caldwell kept pacing near the window, muttering, "We should have left yesterday." Mr. Caldwell sat in his armchair, arms folded, lips pressed tight. Marcus, though, he was calm. Too calm. He stood near the fireplace, the glow painting half his face in gold, half in shadow. "Guess we're stuck," he said, glancing at me. "No cell signal. No power. Just us." I smiled. Sometimes that's the best way to find out who people really are. Tasha shifted uneasily on the couch. "Ma, I don't like this storm." I reached over, squeezed her hand. "Ain't the storm you need to be scared of, baby. It's what the storm brings out." A branch slammed against the window. Bang. Mrs. Caldwell gasped. "Good Lord." I didn't flinch. That old oak been trying to fall for years. It'll give up one of these days. Marcus smirked. "You don't scare easy, Miss May." "Why should I? I built this house with my own hands. Storms can shake it, but they can't take it." He stepped closer to the fire, voice low. "You ever get lonely up here?" "Sometimes," I said. "But I like my own company." He grinned. "Maybe that's why you like having us here, a little excitement." Mr. Caldwell chuckled. "Yeah, we sure brought some life to this quiet mountain." I nodded slowly. "You sure did." The silence that followed was thick enough to slice. The kind of silence that makes you feel watched, even when you're not alone. I got up, walked to the mantel, and pulled down an old Polaroid. It showed me, Tasha, and my late husband, standing in front of the cabin 30 years ago. Marcus looked at it and smiled. "Didn't know you had a husband." "Did," I said. "Man of faith. Taught me everything I know about protecting what's yours." Mrs. Caldwell tried to change the subject. "Well, it's cozy in here. Firelight, good company." Her voice trailed off as lightning flashed, bright enough to show the fear behind her smile. Then the phone rang. Just once. One sharp ring, and then silence. We all froze. Marcus frowned. "Thought you said there was no power?" "There ain't," I said, eyes still on the phone. That line's been dead for years. A second ring echoed through the cabin. Mrs. Caldwell clutched her chest. Who could be calling? Maybe someone checking in, Marcus said. But his voice wasn't steady anymore. I walked over and picked up the receiver. Static hissed for a few seconds, then a faint voice came through. May. It was a whisper, low and broken. Don't trust them. Then the line went dead. Tasha gasped. Mama, who was that? I set the phone down. Someone who remembers this house better than I do. Marcus tried to laugh it off. Probably a prank. Old wiring. Ghost in the line. Maybe, I said. But you ever notice how ghosts only call when guilt's in the room? That shut him up for a while. The hours dragged by. Rain pounded the roof, wind howled like it had a score to settle. We played cards by candlelight, or at least, pretended to. I watched them. They watched me. Everyone pretending nothing was wrong. Then around midnight, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Not Marcus's heavy stride. Not Tasha's light one. These were slower. Older. Familiar. I followed the sound to the back room, my husband's old study. Door cracked open. Candlelight flickered inside. And there was Marcus, standing at the desk, holding my deed. He didn't see me at first. He was reading it, whispering something under his breath. I took one slow step forward. The floor creaked. He turned fast, startled, but then he smiled. You scared me. You in my husband's study, I said, voice steady. That's enough to scare anybody. He raised the paper. I was just curious. Didn't mean any harm. Curiosity's fine, I said. Trespassing's not. He folded the deed and slipped it back into the drawer. You're so protective of this place, Miss May. Why? Because it's all that's left of the people who kept me safe, I said. And because I can feel when someone's trying to take it. He chuckled, but it was tight. You think I'm trying to take your house? I looked him dead in the eye. I think you already decided it was yours. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Outside, thunder cracked like Judgment Day. Then I whispered, don't mistake my kindness for blindness, Marcus. He looked at me, really looked, and I could see it. That mask he wore? It slipped just a little. Enough to show the ambition underneath. The hunger. He gave a slow, deliberate smile. You're a sharp lady, Miss May. I like that. Good, I said. Sharp things cut deep. He walked past me, but as he did, he leaned close enough to whisper, you can't keep us here forever. I smiled. That storm outside says otherwise. When he was gone, I locked the study door behind him. Then I sat at that desk and opened my notebook, the same one where I'd written down every recording time, every word they'd said. As the rain pounded harder, I wrote one last line at the bottom. They think they're hunting me. But the house always protects its own. The fire hissed low in the other room. Mrs. Caldwell was humming something soft, shaky. Mr. Caldwell had fallen asleep in the chair. Tasha came to me, eyes wide. Mema, what's happening? I held her close. Nothing you can't handle, baby. Just remember, the truth always sounds crazy before it makes sense. She nodded, trembling. You scare me sometimes. I smiled. Good. That means you listening. Then I turned off the last candle, let the darkness settle, and whispered to the house. Keep them here. Until I'm done. Outside, the road had washed away completely. No way down the mountain. No phone. No light. No escape. And for the first time since they arrived. Marcus Caldwell finally looked nervous. The next morning, when the storm's calm revealed what the night had hidden, the real story began. And if you're listening right now, don't you dare miss what happens next. Please like, subscribe, and share, then drop your birth year in the comments. If you're anywhere near mine, I've got a story waiting for you. By sunrise, the storm had passed, but the mountain didn't feel calm. The air was thick, still buzzing with something mean and unfinished. The rain had carved new paths through the mud outside, and the road that once wound down to town was gone, buried beneath a mess of fallen trees and rock. When I stepped out onto the porch, the smell of wet pine hit me, sharp and clean. It would have been peaceful, if not for the silence behind me. The kind of silence that meant people were whispering in the other room. I heard Marcus before I saw him. "We just wait till it dries up a little," he was saying. "Then we head down. She can't stop us." Mrs. Caldwell's voice trembled. "You saw the road, Marcus. It's gone. Then we make a new one." Mr. Caldwell sighed. "Boy, you don't make new roads in the Blue Ridge. You wait." I walked in slow, drying my hands on a towel. "You're talking about leaving already? Breakfast ain't even started." Marcus turned, that fake smile right back on his face. "Just planning ahead, Miss May." I nodded. "Planning's good. Execution's better." I set the cast iron skillet on the stove and started cracking eggs. Tasha came down the stairs, sleepy-eyed. "Smells good, Ma. It'll taste better if you keep your ears open today," I said softly. Marcus pulled out a chair. "You make this place sound haunted." I looked him square in the eye. "Sometimes it is." He laughed, but his wife didn't. Mrs. Caldwell looked pale, hands trembling around her coffee cup. "Mama," she whispered to her husband, "you heard that phone last night too, didn't you?" Mr. Caldwell rubbed his temples. "Ain't no phone. Ain't no ghost. Just thunder playing tricks on your nerves." But Marcus wasn't letting it go. "You sure, Miss May?" he asked, leaning forward. "You didn't fake that call? Just to spook us a little?" I stirred the eggs slow, letting the question hang heavy. Then I said, "Why would I waste my breath when the truth already scares you?" He sat back, jaw tight. Mrs. Caldwell looked between us, uneasy. Tasha whispered, "Mema, please stop." I smiled gently. "Oh, I'm not starting nothing. Just letting what's hidden come to light." The rest of breakfast was quiet. Too quiet. Only the rain dripping off the eaves and the scrape of forks on plates. When it was done, Marcus offered to help with firewood, said he needed fresh air. I followed him outside, just to see what he'd do. He went to the shed, yanked the door open, then froze. Inside, stacked neat on the wall, were the boxes I'd moved from the city, each one labeled May and James, Cabin Records 1988 to 2005. He bent down and opened one. I didn't stop him. Inside were folders, photographs, letters, all neatly arranged. He picked one up. "Who's James?" "My husband," I said. "Oh." He smirked. "So here's the reason you think you own this place." I smiled faintly. "No, baby. I know I own it." He picked up a picture, one of me and James standing with another young man. Marcus frowned. "Who's this?" His name was Eddie. Marcus squinted. "He looks familiar." "Should," I said. "He's your daddy's brother." He froze. "What?" I took the photo from his hand, brushed off the dust. "Your father's little brother. Used to come work with James every summer. Till he disappeared." Marcus swallowed hard. "What do you mean disappeared?" I tilted my head. "Went missing after a night not too different from this one. Storm, broken road, whole mountain shut off from the world. Sheriff said he never found a trace. But I remember." He stared at me, searching for some kind of answer. "You saying my uncle died here?" I met his gaze steady. "I'm saying he never left." Marcus's face changed. Not fear, exactly, more like realization crawling up his spine. He stepped back, shaking his head. "You're crazy." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe this mountain just don't like thieves." He stormed back inside. I stood there, listening to his footsteps fade, smiling to myself. Because I hadn't lied, not really. Eddie had come up that mountain one summer and never gone home. But the truth of why was something I'd buried deeper than any grave. Inside, tension thickened like smoke. Mrs. Caldwell started crying quietly, whispering about bad omens and curses. Mr. Caldwell kept saying, "Ain't no curses, woman," but his voice had lost its strength. And Marcus, well, he started talking about inheritance. About how his wife, my daughter, had a claim on the property now that I was getting older. That's when Tasha stood up. "Marcus, you better stop," she said. Mama ain't leaving this house to you. He laughed. You think she's leaving it to you? She barely trusts you either. I stayed silent. Let them argue. Let him show his hand. Then, like a gift, he did. He said, I already talked to the county office last month. Turns out the deed's old. Outdated. If you wanted to contest it, you probably could. Everyone went still. Even Tasha. I turned slow to face him. You went to the county about my deed. He grinned. Just making sure things are in order. You know, for the family. I smiled, slow, knowing. Oh, they're in order, all right. You just don't know whose order they're in. He frowned. That's when I walked to the mantel, reached up, and pulled down an old envelope. See this? I said. James updated the title in 2004, before he passed. Everything after that went through trust transfer. I opened it just enough for him to see the notarized seal. Then I whispered, guess whose name's on it? He leaned closer, eyes narrowing, and froze when he saw it. May Ellen Walker Trust. His jaw clenched. You forged that. Maybe you should call the county and ask again, after the storm clears. For a long second, no one breathed. Then Marcus threw his napkin down, muttered something sharp, and walked out. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the walls. Tasha came to me. Mama, what's happening to him? I looked at her, my baby girl, all grown now but still afraid of her own choices. People show their true selves when money's on the table, I said. Or when ghosts come calling. That night, I heard them arguing in whispers. Marcus was saying something about records and proof. And then, I swear I heard him say it. She can't keep it. I'll make her sign it over if I have to. He didn't know I'd been recording every word since the storm began. Didn't know that camera above the bookshelf wasn't for decor. By morning, I'd have all I needed. And if that mountain decided to help me out again, well, I wouldn't stop it. Because see, revenge don't always come in fire and fury. Sometimes it comes in silence. In patience. In letting people hang themselves with the rope they thought they were using to tie you down. And this time, Marcus Caldwell was about to find out what welcome really meant in my house. By the next afternoon, the air had gone cold again, that kind of mountain chill that seeps straight through your bones even when the fire's burning hot. The clouds hung low, touching the treetops, and everything smelled of wet earth and pine sap. Inside the cabin, you could feel something changing, something slow and dangerous. Marcus wasn't talking to anyone. He spent most of his morning in the den, pacing, muttering under his breath, staring at the fire like he could set it ablaze with his thoughts. Tasha tried to keep peace, bless her heart. She made coffee, tried to make him laugh. But the man wasn't hearing it. Every time he looked at me, there was something dark behind his eyes, not anger anymore, calculation. Mrs. Caldwell had taken to sitting near the window, staring out at the mist like she might see salvation walking up the hill. Mr. Caldwell tried fixing the radio, but all it played was static. And I stayed quiet. I knew how silence worked on people. By noon, Marcus finally spoke. Miss May, he said, leaning in the doorway. Can we talk? I didn't look up from the quilt I was stitching. We been talking all week, baby. What makes today different? This isn't about the past. It's about the future. I tied off my thread, slow and steady. Whose future we talking about? He smiled tight. All of ours. You said this house was your husband's legacy. That's beautiful. But legacy's supposed to continue, right? Passed down to family. Tasha froze at the table. Marcus, don't. But he kept going. You can't live up here forever, Miss May. You're getting older. Things happen. Slippery steps, heavy snow. Wouldn't it make sense to put things in our name now, so you don't have to worry later? I looked up, needle still in hand. You offering me a will or a warning, Marcus? He chuckled low. I'm trying to help you. You call it help, I said softly. But it sound like you trying to bury me before I'm gone. The room went cold. Mrs. Caldwell gasped. Tasha whispered, Ma. But I kept my eyes on him. You know, Marcus, folks who rush inheritances usually end up with nothing but ghosts. He laughed, sharp and humorless. You really do believe this place is haunted, don't you? Haunted? Maybe not, I said. But it remembers. The mountain never forgets who tried to take what wasn't theirs. He smirked, shaking his head, and walked away. But I saw it, that flicker of uncertainty. He wanted control, but the house had already claimed the upper hand. Later that day, I found Mrs. Caldwell in the pantry, crying. She jumped when she saw me. I'm sorry, Miss May. I didn't want you to think we came here to steal from you. I told him this was wrong. I touched her arm gently. You married a man who don't understand boundaries. Ain't your fault his trying to climb over mine. She sniffled. He's not always like this. He just wants more than we have. Wanting ain't the sin, I said softly. Taking is. She nodded, then whispered, there's something you should know. That's when she told me about the phone call Marcus made before the storm. How he'd been trying to reach a lawyer in town to file paperwork on the cabin, as if it already belonged to him. My hand tightened around the shelf edge. He did what? She nodded, trembling. He said it was just a precaution. But I saw the forms. He had your name printed on them, Miss May, under transferor. I smiled, not from joy, but from recognition. The kind that comes when your enemy finally shows their whole face. Thank you, I said. Now I know exactly what kind of welcome to give him. That evening, the fog rolled in so thick you could barely see 5 feet ahead. The house felt smaller, every creak louder, every shadow deeper. I lit candles all around the den. The flicker painted the walls with long, moving shapes. Marcus came down the stairs, wearing that smug little grin again. Power's still out, he said. Guess you should have stayed in the city. City don't keep secrets like these hills, I said. You ever notice how quiet it gets before the truth comes out? He smirked. Truth, huh? Okay then, tell me the truth. What happened to my Uncle Eddie? The question hit like a stone through glass. Tasha looked up from her seat. Mrs. Caldwell stopped breathing. I folded my hands in my lap. Why you asking me that, Marcus? Because you said he never left this place. That's what you told me. So what happened? I leaned back. What you think happened? He stepped closer, voice rising. I think you know. I think you did something to him. Didn't have to, I said. The mountain took care of him. Same way it'll take care of you if you keep pushing that. He slammed his hand on the table. You're bluffing. No, I said quietly. I'm remembering. He looked at me, furious, but under that, I saw fear. Real fear. Because he didn't know if I was lying, and that's what kept him up at night. After that, nobody spoke for hours. You could hear the clock ticking in the hall like a heartbeat counting down to something ugly. Around midnight, I went upstairs to check on Tasha. Her door was open. She was sitting on her bed, staring at a photo of her and Marcus. Ma, she whispered, I think I made a mistake marrying him. I sat beside her. You ain't the first woman to love a man who hides behind good looks and good talk. But you got a choice now. Her eyes filled with tears. He said if I side with you, he'll leave. Take everything. I took her hand. Then let him. Sometimes losing a man means finding your freedom. She nodded slowly, but the fear in her face didn't fade. Because she knew Marcus wasn't the type to just leave. When I went back downstairs, the den door was open, and Marcus was gone. The front door too. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped onto the porch. The fog had thickened again, swirling around the trees like smoke. I could hear footsteps somewhere out there, heavy, uneven. Marcus. I called. Ain't nowhere to go, boy. Road's gone. No answer. Just the sound of water dripping off the roof and the faint creak of the porch steps. Then, from the darkness, his voice, low, trembling, angry. You think you can scare me, old woman? I don't have to, I said. You already scared yourself. The beam of my flashlight caught him halfway down the slope, near the edge where the mudslide had eaten away the road. He was holding something, a shovel. What you diggin' for? I asked. He glared up at me. The truth. Careful, I said softly. Sometimes you find more than you can bury. He didn't answer. Just stared, breathing hard, knuckles white around the handle. Then he dropped it and stormed back toward the cabin. When he passed me, I could feel the heat of his anger, thick and choking. He went straight inside, slammed the door, and locked himself in the study. I stood there on the porch for a long while, listening to the night settle again. The fog moved slow across the yard. Somewhere deep in the woods, a branch snapped. That's when I whispered to the mountain. Almost time. Let him show himself. Because I wasn't the one unraveling anymore. He was. And by morning, the things we'd all buried, grief, guilt, greed, were going to claw their way right back to the surface. By the time I pulled into the driveway of the cabin that Friday morning, the air in the Blue Ridge Mountains felt still, too still. The kind of silence that comes before a storm. The old oak trees swayed just enough to whisper secrets I'd already guessed. I could see a moving truck parked crooked beside my porch, and there, standing proudly like they owned the earth beneath their feet, was Marcus, my son-in-law. And right behind him, my daughter, Renee, holding her phone up, filming the whole thing like it was some happy family vlog. I sat there for a moment, engine idling, watching them laugh. Watching Marcus point at my cabin, giving directions to the movers as if I didn't even exist. The hurt that used to shake me months ago didn't come this time. No. I'd already buried that part of me. What replaced it was quiet, calculated, and final. I got out of the car slowly, the gravel crunching under my shoes. Morning, I said, voice steady, eyes calm. Renee froze first, her smile falling away. Mama. You're back early. Ham, I nodded. Seems like I missed an invitation to my own homecoming party. Marcus grinned that fake grin he always used when he was caught doing wrong. Now, May, we were just setting up. You said this place was for family, right? Renee's parents need a spot to stay too. Figured we'd all make it work together. I tilted my head. Didn't realize make it work together meant changing the deed. His smirk twitched. Because that's what my lawyer had found, their attempt to quietly file a co-ownership claim with forged documents. The kind of crime that could ruin their whole life if it ever saw daylight. I took a step closer. Marcus, you ever notice how quiet it gets up here? You can hear the river 2 miles down. But no one hears you if you call for help. He laughed nervously. What's that supposed to mean? Oh, nothing, baby. Just talking about how peaceful it is. I walked past him toward the porch, the smell of pine needles thick in the air. The movers paused, glancing between us. You can go on and leave that furniture right there, I said, smiling sweetly. Seems there's been a misunderstanding. Marcus's voice sharpened. Now hold on. You said. I said, I cut in, that I bought this cabin to find peace. Not to play house with folks who mistake my kindness for weakness. Renee's voice cracked. Mama, please don't do this out here. Not in front of them. Oh, baby, the time for private conversations passed when your husband decided to lie on my name. She looked at Marcus, her lip trembling. He stared at me, defiant. You can't prove nothing. That's when I smiled, the kind of smile that makes a liar go cold. Sweetheart, you might want to check your email. He frowned, pulling out his phone. I'd timed it perfectly. At that very moment, my lawyer had sent the packet, the forgery documents, the emails between him and a notary, the evidence trail he thought he'd deleted. I watched the color drain from his face. What is this? Evidence, I said softly. And a little reminder that I don't forget betrayal. I just wait for the right welcome. Renee's eyes went wide. Mama, what are you doing? Saving my peace, baby. You and your husband been scheming behind my back for months. He wanted this house, wanted my retirement money, even wanted me out the way. But see, I built my whole life surviving people like him. I wasn't about to let my own daughter's husband make me the fool. Marcus took a step toward me. You wouldn't. I already did. Behind him, one of the movers whispered, Man, she ain't playing. They started packing up quick. Then, as the truck rumbled off, I looked at Marcus and Renee. Now, "You said your parents were coming, right? They can stay right there in that hotel off Route 9. Because this cabin, it's off limits." Renee's voice broke, tears welling up. "Mama, please. I didn't mean for it to go this far," Marcus said. "I know what he said. He said you'd inherit it all when I was gone. He said you might as well start early." She gasped, covering her mouth. I took a slow step forward, lowering my voice. "But I ain't gone yet, baby. And I ain't weak." The mountain wind picked up, swirling the leaves across the porch steps. Marcus's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from my lawyer. He read it aloud, his voice shaking. "Your attempt to alter property ownership has been reported to local authorities." He looked up, pale as chalk. "You called the cops?" "Oh, not yet," I said calmly. "See, I gave you one chance to leave, quietly, without me pressing charges. But since you decided to start moving in, I reached into my bag and pulled out a small, wrapped box. Here's my welcome." He eyed it suspiciously. "What's that supposed to be?" "Open it." He hesitated, then tore the paper. Inside was a key, not to the cabin, but to the storage unit downtown. "What's this?" "The only place you'll be living after this is over," I said. "I packed all your little gifts to my daughter in there, the credit cards, the fake investments, the proof you've been bleeding her account for months. When the police come asking, I'll just point 'em that way." Renee sobbed, "Mama, please, stop." I looked at her gently. "You chose him over me, baby. Now you're gonna see who he really is." Marcus threw the box to the ground. "You don't scare me, old woman." I smiled, stepping closer, voice low and even. "Then why are you shaking?" He didn't answer. Just stood there, chest heaving, eyes darting. The silence stretched between us, thick as fog. Then, without another word, I turned and walked into my cabin, my home. The door closed behind me with a soft thud that sounded like the end of something big. From inside, I could still hear them arguing. Renee crying, Marcus cursing under his breath. But I didn't open the door again. That night, I sat by the fire, letting the flames dance against the walls. The warmth didn't just come from the wood, it came from something deeper. The peace of knowing I'd finally stood my ground. And when the phone rang hours later, it was the sheriff calling. Said Marcus and Renee had left town in a hurry, looking scared out their minds. I just smiled into the receiver. Good. The mountains peaceful again. But as I hung up, I glanced at the photo on the mantel, me, Renee, and her daddy back when love still meant something. My heart ached, but my spirit stayed steady. Because sometimes, peace don't come from forgiveness. It comes from making sure the right people know, you won't be broken twice. If you're still listening, please like, subscribe, and share, and drop your birth year in the comments. If we're the same age, baby, I got a little surprise waiting for you there. And don't go nowhere yet, because the truth about what I found after they left, that was the real twist. The morning after they left, the mountain air felt cleaner. The kind of crisp that cuts right through the fog in your chest. I sat on the porch with my coffee, watching the sunrise bleed gold over the ridgeline. The birds sang like nothing had happened, like the world hadn't just shifted inside those cabin walls. But peace never lasts long when secrets still breathe beneath it. That's something I learned a long time ago. 2 days passed before I noticed the first thing out of place, the sound. It came from under the floorboards near the pantry, soft and irregular, like a faint hum or whisper. The cabin was old, built in the 1950s, so I figured maybe it was the pipes settling or a raccoon looking for warmth. But the sound wasn't random, it was deliberate, mechanical. I grabbed my flashlight and went down to the crawl space, dust swirling in the beam. The air was damp, and the smell of cedar mixed with earth. The deeper I crawled, the louder it got, a faint ticking sound, coming from behind the storage wall. And when I moved one of the old planks aside, I froze. There was a small, metal lockbox wedged behind the foundation. Rusted, heavy, but not forgotten. I pulled it out and wiped the dust off with my sleeve. My initials, MH, were carved faintly into the top. I hadn't seen that box in over 20 years. I took it upstairs, set it on the kitchen table, and just stared at it. The same box my husband had kept hidden in his study before he passed. The same box I thought I'd lost when we moved from Atlanta to Savannah. And now it was under my cabin. For a moment, I just sat there, my heart thudding like it wanted to warn me. Then I took a screwdriver and pried the latch open. Inside, there were old envelopes, faded photographs, and one thick folder labeled Renee Property. My breath caught. I opened it slowly, my hands trembling. Inside were documents, ones my late husband had drawn up before his passing. They showed that he'd bought this land decades ago, back when we were first married. It was never new, not really. He'd kept it quiet, planning it as a surprise retirement gift, for me. And then I saw something that made my blood run cold. At the bottom of the folder was a letter, written in his handwriting. May, if you ever find this, it means Renee knows more than she told you. Be careful who she brings into your home. Some things we think are family, are just masks. I sat back in that kitchen chair, tears welling up, but they weren't the same tears I used to cry. They were heavier. Older. Because suddenly, everything made sense. The way Marcus knew about the cabin's title before I'd even told Renee. The way Renee avoided my calls those first few weeks I bought it. Someone had already known about this place. And then it hit me, that call from the realtor months ago, saying your daughter stopped by to check on the property. I'd brushed it off, thinking it was a misunderstanding. She'd been here before me. I drove down to the realtor's office that afternoon, still holding the letter like proof of a haunting. The receptionist looked up, surprised. Oh, Mrs. Harris, I didn't expect to see you. Everything okay with the cabin? Depends on what you call okay, I said. Can you show me who signed the preliminary access forms for my lot? She clicked through her computer, frowning. Looks like your daughter and her husband picked up the keys 2 weeks before closing, said they were inspecting for you. My jaw tightened. You let them in before I owned it. They said they had power of attorney. I closed my eyes, trying to stay calm. Can you print that? She nodded, nervously. When she handed me the form, I saw the signature, forged again. Marcus's handwriting, sloppy but passable. And right next to it, Renee's initials. That's when the full betrayal set in. Not just from him, but from her. I left the office without another word. The drive back up the mountain felt longer this time. Every mile seemed to whisper something different: anger, heartbreak, disbelief. I thought about how many nights I'd prayed for my daughter's happiness. How I'd overlooked her coldness, her silence, just to keep peace. But sometimes, peace isn't something you keep, it's something you take back. When I got home, I sat in that cabin and read my husband's letter again. And I realized something powerful. He hadn't been warning me about Marcus. He'd been warning me about Renee's weakness, her tendency to let the wrong people lead her. So instead of hate, I chose something sharper: distance. That week, I had the deed refiled under a new LLC, one that bore my maiden name. Legally untouchable. I hired a contractor to reinforce the doors, install cameras, and bury motion sensors along the property line. Not because I was scared, because I was done being caught off guard. Then I did one last thing. I mailed Renee an envelope. Inside was a photo of the cabin, the key she once held, and a note in my handwriting. This was meant to be our family's peace. You let someone turn it into a battlefield. I hope you find your way back to yourself, but not back to me. Weeks passed before I heard from her again. When I finally did, it was a voicemail. Her voice cracked as she said, "Mama, I'm sorry. You were right about him. He left me. I lost everything." I listened to that message 3 times. Then I deleted it. Not out of cruelty, but because sometimes, forgiveness can't come from the same heart that was betrayed. Months later, when the snow came down heavy and the mountains went silent again, I finally felt it: real peace. The kind that comes when you stop trying to fix what broke you. The fire crackled soft beside me as I looked around that cabin, my home, my sanctuary, my lesson. And for the first time, I spoke out loud, to no one in particular. "Thank you, baby," I whispered to the memory of my husband. "For the warning. And for reminding me that even when love betrays you, wisdom saves you." The wind outside answered like a sigh, brushing through the pines. Then I turned off the lights, closed the door, and let the mountains keep my secrets. If you're still here listening, please like, subscribe, and share. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done if your own blood tried to take everything you worked for? Because sometimes, the real revenge is keeping your peace.